Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome to episode 3 of the show. Today I'm going to be talking about propaganda. So propaganda is a big part of our lives. Most people consume media nonstop every day, and much of it's propaganda. Government propaganda and corporate propaganda. Modern propaganda is a consistent, enduring effort to create or shape events to influence the relations of the public to an enterprise, idea, or group. Propaganda has existed since the beginning of human socialization, but up until the last 100 years or so, it wasn't in the forefront of our communication, and now it rules the day. Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome to episode 3 of the show. Today I'm going to be talking about propaganda. So propaganda is a big part of our lives. Most people consume media nonstop every day, and much of it's propaganda. Government propaganda and corporate propaganda. Modern propaganda is a consistent, enduring effort to create or shape events to influence the relations of the public to an enterprise, idea, or group. Propaganda has existed since the beginning of human socialization, but up until the last 100 years or so, it wasn't in the forefront of our communication, and now it rules the day. It never had a negative connotation attached to it until there was a refining process that happened around the time of the First World War, and then it was used to describe a systematic influencing over people by government and businesses.
Wir sind entschlossen, unser Leben mit allen Mitteln zu verteidigen, ohne Rücksicht darauf, ob die uns umgebende Welt die Notwendigkeit dieses Kampfes einsieht oder nicht.
Для нас особенно ценно это доверие, которое означает готовность поддержать нашу партию в ее борьбе за светлое будущее народу, в ее борьбе против войны, в ее борьбе за сохранение мира.
It was perfected by Edward Bernays, who was now known as the father of public relations. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he worked on campaigns for the government, CIA, and big business. He was successful because he had figured out that the average person could be easily manipulated by the minority at the top and believed that they should be, and with media access he was granted at the time, his message could be easily the most widespread. He was involved in the 1954 overthrow of the Guatemalan government. He was hired by the United Fruit Company, which is now Chiquita, to run a misinformation campaign against Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz. That led to the CIA operation PB Success, which you can see in the background here, and the overthrow of the Arbenz government. He specifically referred to the masses as irrational and subject to herd instinct, and outlined how skilled practitioners could use crowd psychology and psychoanalysis to control them in desirable ways. He believed that democracy was essential to social order and growth, and that human progress wasn't possible without the skillful use of propaganda. He was very much in favor of tyranny, he just preferred to think of it as social order. Bernays was quite influenced by the works of Walter Lippmann, specifically his 1922 book, Public Opinion. Most people who know Bernays know his most popular book, Propaganda, which was published in 1928. In 1945, I think he published his best work, which was Public Relations. He also had Engineering of Consent, published in 1955, and Crystallizing Public Opinion in 1923, neither of which I've read. Here are some of Edward Bernays' more noteworthy campaigns. Convincing American men to ignore the feminine stereotype of bracelets and see wristwatches as more manly and practical than pocket watches, making smoking in public socially acceptable for women, promoting the first NAACP convention in Atlanta, Georgia without triggering any violence or counter demonstrations, popularizing ivory soap, helping to re-elect Calvin Coolidge, orchestrating the nationwide Lights Golden Jubilee, honoring Thomas Edison on the 50th anniversary of his invention of electric light, making bacon and eggs a popular American breakfast, convincing Americans who were concerned about consuming too much alcohol that beer was the, quote, beverage of moderation, persuading William Paley to expand and emphasize news coverage on his then new CBS radio network, directing publicity for the 1939 World's Fair, warning germ-conscious consumers that disposable cups were the most sanitary drinking vessel, persuading Americans that fluoridation is safe and beneficial to their health, and promoting national health insurance.
Either you're with us Either you love freedom and with nations which embrace freedom, or you're with the enemy. There's no in between. You're either with us or you're with the enemy. That's clear. I will continue to make that clear.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Political speeches are a science, not an art. They appeal to people's emotions, their biases, and prejudices, and that's what makes them successful. It only makes sense that this would be the case since those biases were largely created by government propaganda in the first place. So to appeal exclusively to them is the easiest path to get people to accept them. If they talk of free healthcare, they're likely to get a positive emotional response, and those that respond negatively will be treated as uncaring and selfish because people are taught to simply react. You hate the poor, it's easy for you to say, etc. Student loan forgiveness, it's minimum wage, it's war, it's affordable housing, it's all the same across the board. Government is going to help the people get all these great things, and if you oppose them, you're an asshole. That's how it works. If you're really looking to understand what's happening in the world today, you have to understand the obstacles you're facing in regard to the information you're being fed. And that doesn't mean picking the right political party. There is only one agenda. Two teams, one agenda. Following their narrative won't help you. It will only drive you further away from reality.
It was a moment many had waited a long time to see. Despite the frigid temperatures, an exuberant crowd packed the National Mall in numbers rarely seen to hear a new president give voice to their hopes and dreams.
Reading the popular newspapers will not help you. It's all the same whitewash political parroting that the television networks promote. I know people who claim to be skeptics that dismiss the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, the Guardian, the Sun, the Mirror, the whatever Post as nonsense, but believe that the New York Times is where truth comes from. This is the same thing as supporting one political party over the other or rooting for one baseball team over another. Okay, so I mentioned the New York Times specifically, and I'm going to give an example of what I'm talking about. Here's an article from September 8th, 2002, okay? I just went through it. It's about threats and responses, the Iraqis. U.S. says Hussein intensifies quest for atomic bomb parts, okay? So I'm through this. 31 times in this article does it say Bush administration officials say, American officials believe, American officials said, have told American officials, American intelligence agencies, an Iraqi defector said, American officials were given, American officials, and so on and so forth. Bush administration officials, American and United Nations officials, who else? A senior administration official, experts say, American experts know, senior administration officials insist, and so on and so forth. 31 instances of this. 29 times, it's just that. Officials say, experts say, no evidence, no reference, no date, no nothing. Twice do they actually mention names, where I've highlighted in green here, where there's actually real people attached to these comments. So ask yourself, do you really believe that these reports are all true, or are they just saying it? Are you going to take the time to figure it out, to go through every one and see how many are true and how many are made up out of whole cloth? No. Pretty much no one's going to do that. But if you or I were having a discussion and I said, the Canadian government said it's going to go to war with Australia, would you be like, oh, well, I guess it's going to happen? No. You'd call me out on it. You'd say, where's your evidence? Where's your proof? But if I was writing for the New York Times, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. Not the vast majority of people. They would believe me. Well, it's the Times. It's the New York Times. Never believe anything. If you hear a story, read a story that says senior officials say, and it goes on, and there's no names, when it was said, to whom it was said, none of that, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. This is the place we're supposed to be able to go to get hard facts. They have access to all the facts. They have access to all the people. They're the ones that are giving us the sources. So if they can't provide any sources, then who do we go to for sources? There are no sources then. We don't get them. They do. They're the New York Times. So if they can't take the time to explain to people who these people are and where these quotes and decisions are coming from, they don't exist. They're nonsense.